Hi, this is Kumar from Greenville, North Carolina, and we have Mathews Abraham and Catherine in our Facebook group, Understanding Worldviews. And we are here to continue our conversation with regard to what's happening in the Middle East, especially. And um, one of the questions we've been asking was, where are we, right? And where are we in this mess and what is going on? And how to identify uh, with the Bible and what's going on in the world. Yeah. So, without any ado, Matthews, Catherine, let's go ahead.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Catherine. It's an interesting time in the world. Where are we? And I think that question is more connected with the disciples asking Jesus, where are we in this agenda of God? And maybe that's a good place, but in our context, it's about what is going on in the Middle East. So let me try to give a brief overview. In 1948, Israel came into existence. In 1956, there was the Suez War, which effectively got reversed. And then in 1967, a bunch of neighbors ganged together on Israel, and Israel launched a preemptive strike. Today we call it the Six-Day War. From the time of Six-Day War, the Palestinians had a bad deal in 1948. They were thrown out of their homes. Many of them were either in Gaza or in the West Bank. And West Bank was grabbed by Jordan, the king of Jordan. And Britain, because it was at the waning days of their empire after World War II, they were not interested in resolving any of this. And they referred this whole problem to the United Nations. And United Nations passed a resolution to give a homeland to the Jewish people. And the resolution made no difference. It was only because they fought and they grabbed what the world promised them, they got it. But by 1967, it was evident we have a military power. Without any doubt, today Israel is one of those top militaries in the world. Small, agreed, but certainly it is very capable and technologically very advanced. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So, 67 to 1973, the Yom Kippur War, they thought in the beginning of the Yom Kippur War, Israel and Syria combined together, their armies attacked. Jordan did not participate. And in the process, Israel went through an initial setback, but they had perhaps even a more spectacular result from the 1973 war. I think it was a long couple of weeks war, which is just very unusually long. Now we have a war that is well over a year. By any standards, in any part of the world, it is a big war. But let's take a moment to understand. The West Bank is ruled by Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. PLO was founded under the leadership of Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat eventually, at the Oslo Accord, they signed a peace deal with Israel. Okay, and once they signed the peace deal with Israel, Palestinian PLO thought that they could attack. Terrorists launched a bunch of attacks. Remember, at that point of time, Israel is led by the Labour Party, which was much more kind of wanting peace. They had a lot of generals, capable military leaders, but they wanted somehow to establish peace. So once the peace accord was signed, PLO rules the West Bank, and slowly but surely, PLO got expelled from Gaza because Hamas, a very radical militant group. So when you look at terrorism and Islamic militancy, PLO was certainly a political organization. They were not interested from the religious perspective. Whereas Hamas is very much connected with Muslim Brotherhood. They look to the Quran as their guide, and they certainly want to get rid of Israel in the Middle East. So there is a religious element that cannot be denied. Now, what is interesting about Hamas, which is a Sunni group, they were very much connected with uh, Iran. And Iran in 1979 launched a revolution. Today we know that as the Iranian Revolution under Khomeini. And his student, Khomeini, today leads this whole thing. So one thing we have to be very careful about all of these things is that Middle East is a lot more complicated than we think. So in October of 2023, when you think about it, what Hamas launched, the world never expected Gaza will get into this kind of a mess. And let me explain what the mess is. I've shared this before. One study of United Nations said if 100 trucks worked during the day and 100 during the night to clear the rubble, it will take about 16 years. So without clearing the rubble, they cannot start rebuilding. Another study recently concluded the rate of growth from 1984 to year 2000 or 2010 is 0.4% growth in the Gazan space. So at that rate, if Israel allows material to come in, to get to the year 2002 or 2005, from where it is, it would take 300 years of continuous activity to bring it 20 years back where Gaza was. So the world cannot underestimate the destruction. So Yahya Sinwar, the murderous, he was called the butcher of Khan Yunis. Everybody was afraid of him. He was very religious, and his signature was that he could be very, very cruel. And his cruelty is what kept him feared by all of his allies and enemies. So he certainly delayed. He had no interest in giving Israel anything, and he wanted both Hezbollah and Iran to come to his aid, and together he was confident if he was given the right resources, he can destroy Israel, because he thought that he had studied the Israeli psyche while he was in the prison. Anyway, right now he's dead, and Hezbollah itself kind of defanged. Not that they have lost all of their ability to attack, they still have some power, but they were supposed to be 5 times more powerful than Hamas. Guess what? Instead of being 5 times, I don't think their attack has even materialized to the extent that Hamas has done. So Iran suddenly feels very exposed, and they are kind of in a very vulnerable position. Now, I would say the world is vulnerable. Let me explain that in a minute. Israel is technologically, way ahead of Iran with respect to the ability to launch an attack or do great harm to Iran. But Iran can act like the drunken man in the bar, the madman at the shootout. That kind of a approach. If it takes, it can cause a lot of disruption to the oil flow, and that is what they're counting on. Nobody would launch an attack, but it is very clear. Israel has said they are going to launch an attack very clearly in response to what Iran has done. So from 1979 till earlier this year, the world knew Iran was trying to do a lot of harm to Israel, but they never ever fought directly. This year, already 2 Iranian attacks have taken place, and I think the US is committed to make sure it doesn't become a big war. And Iran knows that. And Israel can land a big punch. And then if Iran does it, I think the US would be drawn into this whole situation. I'll make 2 more comments of importance. You all know that Putin attacked Ukraine, and that is a disaster. And all of the BRICS nations, there are 36 countries hosted by Putin, and Putin wants to demonstrate to the world, hey, we are still important. We are not pariahs, and therefore we can be good at negotiating in the Middle East. On top of it, this is sad, but it did happen. Hamas did send envoys to Russia, asking Russia to bring peace between PLO and Hamas. So that's very interesting. There is no love lost between Hamas and PLO. It's only because Yahya Sinwar has been killed. Suddenly, I'm assuming nobody is interested, even in the BRICS nations, for Iran to have a central role. Iran is supposed to be a sidekick of Russia. And Russia itself is not acceptable to Western nations because of its attack on Ukraine. So it's a complicated structure, certainly, which tells me, where are we? To answer that question, I think we are in a lot of trouble. And as a man of faith, I would pray, because if Israel attacks Iran, and I think Israel is going to do that, because they definitely want to tell Iran, you can never get away by attacking us. The question is, they could do massive damage, but that damage can never be underestimated. It can quickly go out of control. So I think that's a good place. Maybe I'll make one more comment. There were 4 people kidnapped. 2 had Russian passports. They were civilians. They were released in the first group. And 2 of them are Israeli soldiers with Russian passports. And Hamas has made an offer to Putin, saying that we will release them in the first group itself. And there is a mini discussion, I think Qatar and US and Israel is already talking in Doha. And there is a good possibility that in the next 10 days, there would be what you call a mini release of 6 to 10 hostages. And in that case, 2 of them would be the people with the Russian passport. So again, to conclude, where are we? Only the good Lord knows. That's how I would stop. The nations don't have a clue what is going on. They all think they are going to do one thing, and it can have a cascading effect, just like the story of Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm.
I can make one comment. There is a bank, AQAH, that is a Hezbollah bank, and Israel has made the point to attack it. Israel says that they have a $500 million deposit. They literally run the economy against the will of the Lebanese government. So Israel definitely wants to go after these banks. I believe they have already attacked 20 of their major banking centers. And what they're saying is that they want to destroy Hezbollah's wealth. And that wealth is mostly from Iran, or by squeezing it out of the Lebanese people. So that is the kind of a overview of where we are. Questions? Comments?
On that last point, the bank, the AQUH bank, that's, you said it's a Hezbollah bank?
Yeah.
And that the riches that Israel is going after with Hezbollah have largely come from Iran. Is Iran limitless with their wealth? How wealthy are they?
So the advantage of all these countries, I mean, for example, Russia is a very wealthy country, but 200 billion of their top, of the cream of their wealth is with one person. He rules Russia. And then he's got friends, perhaps, or many of them have 5 to 10 billion or 20 billion. They manage their wealth to support the 200 billion wealth of Putin. So similarly, Iran has got IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they have a outside of Iran wing, and that is what this axis of resistance. Hamas is part of it, and Hezbollah is part of it. So I have a suspicion the average Iranian is very poor, but they squeeze all that from them, the oil wealth, they invest into neighboring countries so that the Iranian government, it's a criminal gang, and they use religious terms and all, but it's a criminal gang, and they are running the show in such a way to protect themselves. So it's not that they have limitless wealth. I would venture to say 1979 by 1982 at least, most of their oil infrastructure has never been updated. So it is very sad. That's the same story with Russia. Some of these countries have done nothing to reinvest their wealth or modernize it. So the world could have catastrophic, infrastructure failure coming from some of these countries. Iran is one such possibility as well.
Could you maybe give a little bit more detail? What happened in 1979 in that Iranian Revolution? Like, what was accomplished? What was the strengths that Iran got from it? Or, well, could you just maybe give a little bit more detail on that?
Yes. Reza Shah Pahlavi was the ruler, very wealthy, very powerful, and he had a secret service called Savak. It was hated by people, and they were as cruel as the current rulers. They will grab people, torture them. And Ayatollah Khomeini escaped from Iran to Iraq because he being a Shiite, and from there he went to Paris. So there's a very interesting kind of duping, if I may use the word. He comes back and he says he wants to put a secular government and a velayat-e faqih, that is, they wanted to have a constitution built on Islamic thought. What he really meant was he wanted to use the secular credentials for some time, make sure the secret police is under his control, which he did. So it is funny, all of the neighboring Sunni nations suddenly felt the Shia, the underdog in Islam, seems to be more advanced politically. At least he gave that impression. And then Saddam Hussein, their neighbor, who is a Sunni from Iraq, launched an attack. It was like 1 million people died. It was one of the worst events of the 20th century. The Western media did not spend a lot of time explaining how many people. Young boys were given a key, a plastic key with a key to martyrdom. So the Iranian military would send these boys over the minefield. When they explode, they are told, "Don't worry, you're going to heaven." So it was a very cruel regime from that time onwards. Now, certainly post 1989, by 2000, that country got stabilized. There was an income and there was a regular distribution. But certainly it was 20 years behind by 2000, 79 to 2000. I would say there was not much of progress. And whatever money they have been spending it for arms and making missiles and, all of those, the drones, and they're good in one aspect of their military. And nobody can deny they have a 500,000 more than 500,000 soldiers are there. So they have a large standing army, unlike Israel. Are they doing well with their limitless wealth? They could have become one of the most modern countries in the world. They've just squandered it away. It's another story, like North Korea. And the North Korean soldiers are trying to now help Putin in Ukraine. So it's a very complicated world. Very, very complicated.
It's like after every one of these things, you want to ask the question, why? Why?
Okay.
Why?
So maybe we have an answer to the why question, because these, what do you call, dictators or dictatorial regimes. I mean, I would not use the word dictator with Khomeini. Khomeini is like the father of the nation who basically tells, this is what you can do. So the government is formed out of election in Iran. But aren't they dictatorial? The answer is absolutely no doubt in my mind. They are worse than that. But certainly North Korea is dictatorial, and Russia is, and China is. These nations have some kind of a semblance of acceptability in the global south, because India is part of that. South Africa is part of that. China, nobody trusts China. But the interesting part is that Russia and China being on the same side gives them some credibility even in the Security Council in the UN. So it's a complicated, it's like the why answer is simple. These powers are jealous of the freedoms of the West, and they don't want that West-led global order, if I may say that. Did I answer your question, Catherine?
Yeah, that's a very sobering thought.
Yeah.
That's a big answer to the why question.
Yes, they are. And the weird part is, if you read Psalm 2 and Psalm 110, both these Psalms talk about human beings taking their stand against the Lord and his anointed one. It is very clearly written. And that is the story, whether it's Hitler or Mussolini, all these people, when they get power, think, I'm pretty sure even we, we seem to be sane people, but once we are granted power, our true nature will come. And that is that we like to think, I am somebody important. We're just a human being with the breath, the last breath, it's over, So it's a long answer to a simple question.
No, it was good.
I want to go back to the topic we discussed earlier. You mentioned the hostages.
Yes.
The hostages are Israeli hostages, right?
What happened was they crossed the boundary. It was like a kibbutzim. There was a music festival, whoever they got. And I'm pretty sure they had 11 or 10 nationalities in that. It is not all Jews. But what Hamas did is that they released, I'm pretty sure they were Indians, they were Bangladeshis, there were Sri Lankans, there were many people, whoever they got. But the Israeli soldiers and the men, and certainly a bunch of women as well. And there were 4 people with Russian passports. That's what I was mentioning. 2 of them they released because they were civilians. And the Hamas said, we don't want to be in the bad books of Putin, because they expect Putin to come and help them, even in fixing Lebanon.
The other two are Russian.
So there is a story here which makes it a little complicated. I don't want to misrepresent reality. Those two did not have a Russian passport. They had some Russian origin. They had the right to apply for a passport, and they got, after they were hostages only, they got their Russian passport. So it's highly possible they were born to Israeli Jews, Russian Jews who migrated to Israel. The birth might have been in Russia. So, I don't know the details. I just made all this up. But I know that while they were hostages only, they got the Russian passport.
Interesting. And where are those banks? You said the banks?
Okay. So, see, Lebanon is a country where Hezbollah is a group within Lebanon. I told you there are 17 confessional groups. The Sunni, the Shia, Rafik Hariri, the son whose father was murdered. He was the prime minister of Lebanon. And there's a lot of bloodshed, and it all has been in some form controlled by Hezbollah, but nobody has got the courage to say anything. Hezbollah runs a bank, and this bank, they basically say, is either Iranian money, or there was a very tragic explosion in the Lebanese port in the capital, Beirut, about 3 years back. It was almost like an atomic explosion. It was like a Russian ship with chemicals to make manure, and somehow they didn't have the right papers, and the Beirut port people said that we are going to keep the ship, and they did. The only problem was they were not taking care of this. It became a huge explosion, almost to a low level atomic explosion. That's how big it was. It destroyed a lot of Beirut, and a lot of money came in from international community to help the Lebanese. And Israel says that a part of that was stolen by Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is very good in stealing. They have stolen from their Lebanese people. See, Lebanese people, it's easy to steal because you have a gun, you go and say, give me your money. And he doesn't have a gun, so he's not going to fight. He gives the money. So that's one part. But they've also done a lot of activities to help the poor and all that. So we cannot deny that. Israel says that they have at least 500 million worth, $500 million worth of gold and assets under a hospital. The British, BBC went and checked. They say they couldn't find it. Anyway, nobody is going to show it to them. If it's under in the foundation structure, nobody is going to take you and say, "Hey, here's the gold." So, anyway,
wow.
That's interesting. I have a question. Maybe it's more because how many of us can really picture the devastation of Gaza as it is right now after all of the bombings and this war that has gone on for a year. And these numbers, I'd heard them as well on the news. 300 and some days they projected to even get it back to the way it was.
300 and some years.
Years, that's what I meant to say. Sorry, years. Not days, years. So what I want to understand is, I thought that Gaza was run down before. Like, I thought Gaza was a very impoverished place that, I don't want to say it's a lot of slums, but it really always was presented as a very, very poor place, and the people didn't live in, like, it's not like the cities were really, really nice. It's like, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say, how
Yes,
bad was
yes,
it to start with? They're saying 365 years or whatever to get back to the way it was, but it wasn't good before. Is
okay.
that?
That's a very good observation. So some things are relative. Not everything is apples to apples. For example, the kids could go to school. There was food distribution. There was health clinics. There were hospitals. There was what do you call transportation. Now,
Okay.
it did not have the model of freedom in it. So remember, from the 1980s to the year 2000, Gaza was impoverished. But the people of Gaza had lots of family members across the world. They would go, and they really had a healthy in and out traffic. Now, all of this means that they had houses, apartments, buildings to go in and stay. So the problem, what I think they are trying to tell is that once that social network, the infrastructure, all of that has been bombed out. If I remember correctly, 60% of the buildings will need some kind of a structural, and that is a huge number. And Israel always controls what goes in because they want to verify. Even if Israel controls it, Hamas would take from the top again. So that's why they said 0.4% of GDP growth. If that is the approach, and that could very well be the approach between year 2000 to 2024, last 24 years. If you look at that approach, it would take more than 300 years to rebuild Gaza to the level it was somewhere around 2002 and 2004. So it's very complicated. It's very complicated. War distorts everything. One bomb can destroy 20 years of work. So, and any other questions?
So what is the next thing? Are we seeing an attack from Israel on Iran now? Is that
So I have a suspicion that somebody in the US leaked the plan to delay it. Maybe Israel had the plan to attack before the US election. Election is about 2 weeks away. So, there's a game, I mean, what do you call a game within a game. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows that Biden doesn't really care for Kamala Harris, but Biden detests Trump. So he certainly wants Kamala Harris to win. I mean, we are assuming all this. So we don't know. Somebody within the administration gamed and released the Israeli plans to attack. So Israel is saying, then why should we tell you when we are going to do and how we are going to do? So no, everybody is nervous at this point of time. Yeah.
Well, from their standpoint, it's a good point.
It's a very yeah.
From their standpoint,
Yeah.
trust is a very big thing. What I see in all the stories you tell in the Middle East and the environ, one of the key missing components is trust.
Absolutely. And there is no trust lost between Hamas and PLO. And that is where the great tragedy for the Gazans. West Bank, the weird part is that West Bank has got a reasonably good life. Sure, it's under the Israeli authorities and the military is there, police is there. But there are lots of Palestinians who are saying, let us do the very same thing the Gazans did. And unfortunately, what they don't know is that seems to be what the Bible also points out. There will come a time And when that happens, the picture is from Revelation 13 and Daniel's chapter 7 and all that. It looks as though Gaza would be repeated in West Bank, and that is the time of what the Bible calls the ruler called the Antichrist. So it's a very tragic story. Very tragic story.
It's so interesting how you talk about, the relatively good or stable life in West Bank. The PLO used to be in Gaza. Is that what you said before Hamas?
Yes.
But now, why then is it so? All right. So, I mean, I have been to Israel and we have gone into the West Bank, but it was always at a high risk. It was always called a very dangerous place to go into, and they have armored buses and there are shooters out there. Well, who are these people shooting?
So it's a place.
Who are the shooters?
Yeah. So the snipers, Hamas has got a leadership of 6 or 7 people, and many of them of higher rank over them, the current 6 or 7 have been killed. Yahya Sinwar is one. Ismail Hania is another one. And I can give you a bunch of, Muhammad Daif is another one. I can give you a bunch of names like that. But that's not the point. The point is this. Even the current leaders, many of them are snipers. They are all good at killing each other. PLO has killed, Hamas has killed some PLO people. And Yahya Sinwar's great fame is that he choked 2 or 3 people in Gaza with his own bare hands. That's what his, name to fame. And that is the last thing you want in a leader, It's a very different, distorted society, sadly.
Wow. Pretty terrible when your leaders are snipers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No love lost.
No. No trust and no love.
Yep.
Any other questions, Catherine, before we end this session? Yeah.
No, I think I've got about as much as I can digest right now.
Yeah. So we will get back on the 28th. Is that the plan? Yeah.
The Monday, yes.
Monday. Yes.
And you know that I am today in Washington, D.C. I would be hopefully in my home. And
are you meeting somebody in the Capitol or?
No, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought since you're in DC,
no,
there's some political connection.
No, not really. Not really.
Okay. Some advisorship role.
No. I'm a regular guy.
Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to, just before you go, I wanted to say to anybody who's watching this Zoom call, we haven't had you on the live Zoom. We've had a little bit of problems with the technicalities and whatnot, but we want you to put your questions in. We talk about things that are interesting to everyone, and that God leads Mathews to share. But if you have questions and you would like to know, for example, what Mathews says about them, put it on the site, put it on the Facebook page, or add it to a call while we're on it, and we will get that question answered. We'll make sure that Mathews sees it, and he can answer your question. We want people to ask those questions.
Thank you, Catherine. That's a good pitch.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I'd appreciate that. Actually, we had a couple of people watch today, and I'm sure we will have some comments and questions.
Great.
So we are planning like a 8-week session in the coming months. So hopefully we will have more information on that as we go. Yeah, I don't want to say much about it. Let's have that ready before we launch the program on that one.
Good.
So good talking to you guys, and thank you, and have a good weekend.
Same to you both. Thanks.